A very good morning to all of you. I am Manita Malik, Assistant Professor in Doon Valley Institute of Pharmacy and Medicine, Karnal. Today I am here to discuss about the topic that is the edible vaccines. So edible vaccines, what are edible vaccines? As you can get an idea from this picture, there are lot many fruits and vegetables here and a kid is trying to eat this in the form of vaccine. So before starting the edible vaccine, I want to tell you about the what is vaccine. A vaccine, it is a biological preparation that improves our immunity to a particular diseases. वैक्सीन क्या होती है? एक ये बायोलॉजिकल प्रिपरेशन है जो आपकी इंप्रूव करती है इम्यूनिटी को टू ए पर्टिकुलर डिसीजेस. And vaccine, it is a word which is derived from the usage of cowpox. It is a Latin word. In the Latin, vacca means cow means vacca. So from there, the word vaccine came from. And vaccine, what does it contain? How it helps in improving the immunity to a particular disease, as it contains an agent that resembles a disease-causing microorganism and is often made from weakened or killed forms of the microbe, its toxin, or one of its surface proteins. वैक्सीन किससे बनी होती है? इट इज एन एजेंट जो आपका किस एजेंट से बना होता है? जो बिल्कुल सिमिलर होता है विद द डिसीज कॉजिंग माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज्म. जिससे डिसीज हुई है उसी का बिल्कुल सिमिलर से वैक्सीन बना होता है, बट दैट एजेंट इट्स प्रेजेंट इन द वैक्सीन इन द weakened or in the attenuated form, that it is now not able to cause a disease but can help to prevent diseases by formation of the antibodies. The agent which stimulates the body's immune system to recognize the foreign antigen and it destroy it. And these are the agent which stimulates the body immune system to recognize the foreign antigen, and by producing the antibodies, you can destroy it. So a renowned scientist, that is Edward Jenner, in 1796 used this vaccine in human beings, that is a smallpox vaccine, which results in the protection of human beings from the smallpox. And Jenner's work was continued by the Louis Pasteur. It is a basic definition of vaccine, that vaccine is a disease antigen that stimulates the body to produce an antibody reaction, but it is not strong to produce the disease's harmful effects. That is a disease. A vaccination is a disease antigen that stimulates the body to produce an antibody reaction, but it is not strong enough to produce a disease harmfulness. इसका मतलब क्या? डेफिनेशन का डिसीज एंटीजन एक ऐसा होता है जो स्टिमुलेट करता है हमारी बॉडी को टू प्रोड्यूस एन एंटीबॉडी रिएक्शन, बट इट इज नॉट दैट मच स्ट्रॉन्ग टू प्रोड्यूस द डिसीज हार्मफुल इफेक्ट्स, कि उससे आपको डिसीज नहीं होगी बट आपकी बॉडी क्या करेगी? स्टिमुलेट कर सकती है एंटीबॉडीज प्रोडक्शन को. एंड वैक्सीन इज अ बायोलॉजिकल प्रिपरेशन, और यू कैन से वैक्सीन क्या है कि बायोलॉजिकल प्रिपरेशन है that establish or improves immunity to a particular disease. वैक्सीन क्या करती हैं? आपकी इम्यूनिटी को improve करती हैं towards a particular disease. For example, now in the children, infants, since the day one vaccination procedure start, vaccination proper schedule up to 5 years. So what are these used for? Vaccination, these are used to prevent a disease causing in the future, कि आपको कोई भी फ्यूचर में डिसीज ना हो. बिकॉज वैक्सीन क्या करती है? हमारी इम्यून सिस्टम को, हमारी इम्यूनिटी को स्ट्रॉन्ग कर देती है. एंड वैक्सीन कैन बी ऑफ टू टाइप. इट कैन बी अ प्रोफाइलेक्टिक और इट कैन बी अ थेरेप्यूटिक. प्रोफाइलेक्टिक, प्रो मीन्स प्री, पहले. तो प्रोफाइलेक्टिक मीन्स the vaccinations which are used to prevent the effect of a future infection by any natural or wild pathogen. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, जो अभी मैंने आपको एग्जाम्पल बताया कि अगर हमें डिप्थीरिया वैक्सीन, टेटनस वैक्सीन हम पहले ही बच्चों को लगा देते हैं बिकॉज इन फ्यूचर उनको वो प्रॉब्लम, वो डिसीज ना हो. सो दिस वैक्सीनेशन इज नोन एज प्रोफाइलेक्टिक. एंड व्हाट आर थेरेप्यूटिक्स? थेरेप्यूटिक मीन्स टू क्योर. For example, the vaccination which are used in the cancer that categorized under the therapeutic vaccine. So you can divide vaccine into two parts, or you can classify vaccine into two parts, that is a prophylactic and therapeutic. So now coming to the what are the ideal properties of the vaccines. कैसी होनी चाहिए आपकी वैक्सीन आइडियल. सो इट शुड नॉट बी टॉक्सिक और पैथोजेनिक. आपकी जो वैक्सीन है वो टॉक्सिक नहीं होनी चाहिए और पैथोजेनिक नहीं होनी चाहिए. इट मीन्स दैट इट शुड नॉट कॉज अ डिसीज एंड इट शुड हैव अ लो लेवल ऑफ साइड इफेक्ट्स. उसके साइड इफेक्ट्स बहुत ही कम होने चाहिए. एंड इट शुड नॉट कंटामिनेट द एनवायरमेंट and it should not cause problems in individual like of allergic reaction. और कोई problem cause नहीं करनी चाहिए उसको. And the technique of vaccination should be as simple and it should be a cheap, because you know all the parental preparations are very expensive, but you should try that if you are involved in the vaccine production that it should be a cheap so that it can be easily available. So now coming to the vaccine, edible vaccines. So till now I have tell you about the vaccines. Vaccine is a antigen preparation which stimulates our immunity. Now coming to the edible vaccines. Vaccine के आगे आपका word लग गया edible. Edible means which you can eat. So vaccine that one can eat are called edible vaccines, and which are among the most unusual approaches for administering new vaccine. This is a very new technique, and in this they are engineered to contain antigen but bears no genes that would enable whole pathogen to form. And again, the edible vaccines are the mucosal targeted vaccine. As you know, the parental vaccine, normal vaccines are systematic, that works and through going through the blood, but the edible vaccine starts its actions in the mucosal layer, since in the mouth, and which cause stimulation of a blood in systemic and mucosal immune response too. So edible vaccine, in the edible vaccine, transgenic plants are used as a vaccine production system. In the edible vaccine हम क्या use करते हैं? Transgenic plant. Trans means and genic means genes, trans means change. कि हमारा जो genetic plants हैं उनको change कर दिया जाता है to produce a vaccine production system. They plant act as a vaccine production system. For example, you can see in this picture that an injection is applied on a banana. That vaccination is now in banana, and when you eat banana, vaccine already introduced in your blood. And the genes encoding antigen of bacterial and viral pathogens can be expressed in plants in a form in which they retain native immunogenic properties. And initially it was thought to be useful only for preventing infectious disease. Initially this was the thought that edible vaccine are just used only for preventing the infectious disease, but now it has found the application in prevention of autoimmune diseases, in birth control and cancer therapy also. So edible vaccines are currently being developed for a number of humans and animal disease. As one of our scientists said, Hippocrates, the father of the medicine, said, "Let thy food be thy medicine." That is, it means your food should be your medicines. On the basis of this concept, edible vaccines are working. That कि आपका food में आपको medicines मिल जाए आपकी. So when the edible vaccines are taken orally, orally means by mouth, when you take this medicine, it undergoes a mastication process, that is chewing process, and majority of the plant cells degradation occur in the intestine. आपके mouth से लिया और उसका degradation कहाँ होगा? आपके intestine में, as a result of the action of digestive or bacterial enzyme on these vaccines. आपके intestine में जाने पर आपके वहां पर बहुत सारे digestive enzyme present हैं जो आपके उस वैक्सीनेशन पे वर्क करेंगे. And the first report of edible vaccines in seen in tobacco at 0.2%, 0.02% of total E protein level appeared in 1990. And these vaccines are currently being developed for a number of human and animal diseases, including measles, cholera, and hepatitis B. So till now we have discussed about what is edible vaccine and what are its ideal properties. Now why edible vaccines? आपका नॉर्मल वैक्सीनेशन प्रोसेस कब से चला आ रहा है, बट नाउ व्हाई, क्यों एडिबल वैक्सीन एक न्यू टेक्निक इंट्रोड्यूस हो रही है? बिकॉज ऑफ मेनी रीजन, सम ऑफ देम आर, first one, it is needle free. Edible vaccines are needle free, as in this vaccination you don't have to need a injection or parental or a needle, and it is also painless technique. And this is a oral vaccine, and that is you can just get your vaccine by eating from the mouth. And oral vaccine provide one of the advantages over the normal vaccine is that oral vaccines provide mucosal immunity at various sites by secreting antibodies. That is, where in our body mucosal layers are present, oral vaccines can work. And in this method, you don't need to worry about the reuse, the misuse, and lack of sterilization. Thus, there is a low risk of infection, because in the conventional vaccination, there is, we have to take care of the needle, that it should be sterilized, it can't be reused, and there are many methods, and there is a high risk of infection. But in the edible vaccines, this is needle free and low risk of infection. For example, आपको बनाना में अगर हमने इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया एडिबल वैक्सीन बाय इंजेक्टिंग द जीन्स, ट्रांस जीन्स, सो बाय जस्ट ईटिंग बनाना, your vaccine is introduced in your body and it can start working. So there is a no use of any needle free, and it is a painless. Next point is cheap. It is very economical. As parental preparation, normal vaccinations are very high in rate, and this is cheap as estimated cost of $0.005 to grow antigen for one dose of hepatitis B vaccines in an unprocessed form. And administering oral vaccine would require little or no training at all. ऐसा आपको पता होगा कि इंजेक्शन लगाने के लिए कोई भी इंजेक्शन नहीं लगा सकता है. You should have a training before applying injection. But in edible vaccines, there is no need of training at all. Next point is heat stable, that is storage. आपको नॉर्मल वैक्सीनेशन को स्टोर करने के लिए आपको रेफ्रिजरेटर चाहिए, बिकॉज दे आर प्रोन टू ऑक्सीडेशन. आप उसको नॉर्मल टेम्परेचर पे नहीं रख सकते हो. बट एडिबल वैक्सीन्स आर हीट स्टेबल and they do not require the cold chain maintenance. And if the local or native crop of a particular area is engineered to produce a vaccine, then the need for transportation and distribution can also be eliminated. अगर आपके पास में ही आपके नेटिव एरिया में आप एक वैक्सीनेशन वो प्लांट को ग्रो करा सकते हैं by introducing the vaccination. So by doing this, there is no need of transportation, and transportation charges can also be eliminated. And the next point is safe. That is, it is a most important point is this is safe. The trigger the immunity at a mucosal level such as mouth, and which is body's first line of defense. And I have already tell you that these vaccines are oral vaccines and starts from the mucosal lining of the mouth, and so they are also known as the body's first line of defense, and they need no purification. And edible vaccines can activate both mucosal and systemic immunity also. So these are the reasons why you should choose edible vaccines over the normal vaccines. This is needle free, there is no pain of a needle, and there is low risk of infection. Then it is cheap, you can find it economical. The storage problem is not there. You don't have need to cold chain maintenance, and transportation charges and transportation time you can eliminate through this, and this is also very safe. Now coming to the mechanism of action, how edible vaccines work. In mechanism, you came to know about their working. So the goal of the oral vaccination is stimulate the mucosal and systemic immunity against pathogen. Remember that this oral vaccination helps to provide you both type of immunities, that is the mucosal level and as well as in the systemic immunity. So edible vaccine when taken orally, जब आप माउथ से लेते हैं तो it undergoes the mastication process, chewing process, and the majority of the plant cell degradation occur in the intestine as a result of the action of the digestive or bacterial enzyme on edible vaccines. जैसे ही आपने माउथ से लिया वो इंटेस्टाइन में गया तो वहां पर बहुत सारे डाइजेस्टिव और बैक्टीरियल एंजाइम्स एक्ट करेंगी, लाइक पेप्सिन, वो जो आपके वैक्सीनेशन को काम करने में हेल्प करेगी. So before on near the intestine there are present Pierce patches that is known as PP, and they are enriched source of the immunoglobulin A IgA producing plasma cells, and they have the potential to populate means increase the mucosal tissue there, and then they serve as a mucosal immune effector sites. What is the main effector site of the edible vaccines are the Pierce patches PP, as they are enriched source of the IgA, and they can produce the plasma cells in a very large amount, and they serve as a mucosal immune effector site. After that there is the breakdown of the edible vaccines near the PP. जब आपने edible vaccines को माउथ से लिया, मैस्टिकेशन प्रोसेस स्टार्ट हुआ, एंड इंटेस्टाइन में पियर पैचेस में ब्रेकडाउन स्टार्ट होता है नियर पीपी. And this PP consists of the 30 to 40 lymphoid nodules on the outer surface of the intestine, and it also contains the follicles. So these follicles act as a site from which the antigen penetrates into the intestinal epithelium. आपके outer side से penetrate करेगा edible vaccine intestinal epithelium में, thereby it accumulate antigen within organized lymphoid structure. वहां पर antigen accumulate होने लग जाएंगे, and from there antigen then comes in contact with the M cells, that is the memory cells. Then M cells passes then this antigen to the macrophages and B cells wall, and then these B cells activate the T cells to provide the immune response, and in this way the immunity is activated by the edible vaccines. I am again repeating this. आपने oral vaccination ली, इंटेस्टाइन में गया, वहां पर पीएस पैचेस से, पीएस पैचेस में दिस आर द rich source of the IgA, and they produce the plasma cell, and they act as a immune effector site. After this there is a breakdown of the edible vaccine in the PP, and it contains the 30 to 40 lymphoid nodules, and from there the antigen penetrates into the intestinal epithelium from the outer surface of the intestine, and then antigen comes in contact with the M cells. From the M cells it passes antigen to the macrophages and the B cells, and B cells activate the T cells to provide the immune response, and in this way the immunity is activated by the edible vaccine. And this is a picture showing the initial response when an antigen from the vaccine introduced in your body, like it comes in contact with the M cells, then M cells passes the antigen to the macrophages and the B cells. Macrophage, through the macrophage, it displays the pieces of antigen to the helper T cells, and the helper T cells stimulates the B cells and seek out antigen at a distant sites. Then these T cells activated the B cells, and it makes release of antibodies and able to now neutralize the antigen. I am again repeating. एंटीजन आपका आया वैक्सीन से, एम सेल्स में गया, एम सेल्स ने क्या किया, पास किया उस एंटीजन को मैक्रोफेजेस में और बी सेल्स में, दोनों को पास आउट किया, मैक्रोफेजेस एंड बी सेल्स. सेकेंड स्टेज में क्या हुआ, मैक्रोफेजेस ने डिस्प्ले किए पीसेस ऑफ एंटीजन टू द हेल्पर टी सेल्स, यहाँ पर टी सेल्स को दे दिया. नाउ जो हेल्पर टी सेल्स थे उन्होंने क्या किया, बी सेल्स को एक्टिवेट किया और बी सेल्स ने रिलीज की एंटीबॉडीज. नाउ ये एंटीबॉडीज जो प्रोड्यूस हुई हैं आपके एंटीजन को न्यूट्रलाइज करने में हेल्पफुल होंगी. दिस इज द इनिशियल रिस्पॉन्स. एंड व्हेन अ डिसीज एजेंट अपीयर्स लाइक अराइविंग वायरस आपकी बॉडी में कोई आ रहा है तो क्या होता है, द सेम प्रोसेस, इन्फेक्टेड सेल आया, इन्फेक्टेड सेल ने सबसे पहले क्या किया, वही एम सेल्स मेमोरी सेल्स, उनके पास पहले से ही फीड था ये इंफॉर्मेशन कि जब भी कोई वायरस आएगा तो हमें क्या करना है, टी सेल्स को, मेमोरी हेल्पर टी सेल्स को स्टिमुलेट करना है. एंड द मेमोरी हेल्पर टी सेल्स प्रोड्यूस साइटोटॉक्सिक टी सेल्स टू अटैक द इन्फेक्टेड सेल. ये साइटोटॉक्सिक टी सेल्स करते हैं और यहाँ पे इनको अटैक करते हैं इन्फेक्टेड सेल्स के ऊपर. देन मेमोरी हेल्पर टी सेल्स इन द सेकेंड स्टेज stimulate the antibody secretions from the B cells, and antibodies now quickly neutralize the invader. So this is the basic mechanism of edible vaccines. Now the development of edible vaccine, how you can develop the edible vaccines. You can develop the edible vaccines by two ways. That is, in one case, the entire structure of genes is inserted into the plant transformation through a vector between 5' and 3' regulatory element, and this will allow the transcription and accumulation of encoding sequence in the plant. And in the second case, epitope within the antigen are identified, only epitope, and DNA fragments encoding these can be used to construct gene by fusion with a coating protein gene from a plant virus, that is the TMV, that is the tobacco mosaic virus, or CMV, that is the cytomegalovirus. In this diagram, I am explaining how you can develop the edible vaccine. Like in the pathogenic organism, structural gene is extracted and plant transformation vector for foreign gene expression, यहाँ से गया वहां पे ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन हो गया, इस जीन को आपने इंसर्ट कर दिया प्लांट के अंदर थ्रू अ वेक्टर दैट इज द एग्रोबैक्टीरियम विच मीडिएट जेनेटिक ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन एंड रीजनरेशन ऑफ ट्रांसजेनिक प्लांट। यहाँ से जो आपका प्लांट के अंदर पहले जीन था वो पैथोजेनिक ऑर्गेनिज्म का जीन हमने लिया और उसके अंदर इंट्रोड्यूस करा दिया थ्रू अ एग्रोबैक्टीरियम, एंड वहां से आपका जो प्लांट में था, दिस इज द प्लांट नाउ नोन एज ट्रांसजेनिक प्लांट बिकॉज उसका जीन ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन हो गया। देन स्टेबल इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ जीन इनटू ए न्यूक्लियर क्रोमोसोम में गया, न्यूक्लियर क्रोमोसोम में जाने के बाद वो ग्रोथ हुआ, नाउ जो पोटैटो प्लांट में पोटैटो आया दैट आर ट्रांसजीन एंड दे एक्ट एज अ edible vaccine. Now from these potato extraction of foreign antigen and feeding of edible plant tissues here. And second method is method of transformation of the DNA or gene into a plant, and this can be achieved by the plasma vector carrier system, that is through the agrobacterium tumefaciens method, and the microprojectile bombarded method, and third one is the electroporation method. So three methods are here: agrobacterium tumefaciens, as we have seen in this. Second is the microprojectile bombardment, means through the gene gun method you can introduce the gene. Third one is the electroporation method. This is the diagram to show how you can make an edible vaccine. One of the way of generating edible vaccines on the bacterium agrobacterium tumefaciens to deliver into a plant cells the genetic blueprint for the viral or the bacterial antigen. Antigens are the proteins that elicit a targeted immune response in the recipient, and this diagram illustrates the production of vaccine potatoes. Firstly, you have to cut the leaves. आपने एक छोटा सा लीफ का पार्ट ले लिया, देन एक्सपोज लीफ टू द बैक्टीरिया कैरिंग एन एंटीजन जीन। यहाँ पर आपने मीडिया में क्या किया, लीफ को रखा और उसमें बैक्टीरियल सस्पेंशन था। बैक्टीरियल सस्पेंशन में क्या था आपका, एक तो एंटीजेनिक जीन, प्लाज्मिन दैट एक्ट एज अ वेक्टर, एंड एंटीबायोटिक रेजिस्टेंट जीन। Now we have to expose the leaf to the bacteria carrying an antigen gene and the antibiotic resistant gene and allow the bacteria to deliver the gene into the leaf cell. बैक्टीरिया से जितने भी जीन होंगे वो आपके लीफ सेल में ट्रांसफर हो जाएंगे। तो प्लांट सेल में ये बैक्टीरिया का जीन आ गया, ये प्लांट का डीएनए था बट यहाँ पे हमने क्या कर दिया, उसको वहां रखा तो बैक्टीरिया का जीन आ गया। नाउ इट इज ट्रांसजेनिक बिकॉज इज जीन्स आर चेंज। After this, they expose the leaf to an antibiotic to kill cells that lack the new genes. इसको हमने एंटीबायोटिक मीडियम में रखा एंड एक्सपोज किया लीफ को, सो दैट द जो जीन्स न्यू नहीं बने हैं, जिनके अंदर जेनेटिक फॉर्मेशन नहीं हुआ है, जीन ऑल्टर्ड नहीं हुए हैं, वो अलग हो जाए। वेट फॉर द सर्वाइविंग जीन अल्टर्ड सेल्स टू मल्टीप्लाई एंड फॉर्म ए क्लम्प। Those genes which are altered, they form a callus, that is the undifferentiated mass. And now, as we have discussed in the plant tissue culture, these callus are allowed to sprout shoots and roots, like rooting and shooting. And when there is a rooting and shooting, we have to put them in the soil, and within the 3 months, the plant cells will grow into a plants bearing antigen laden vaccine potatoes. आपका ये पोटैटो इतना बड़ा हो गया, प्लांट बड़ा हो गया, और वहां से जो पोटैटो आए, दे आर नोन एज नाउ वैक्सीन पोटैटोज। और जब भी आप ये पोटैटो को खाएंगे, सो दिस विल वर्क एज एन एडिबल वैक्सीन। Now here are the some plants used for edible vaccines are the tobacco, potato, banana, tomato, rice, lettuce, soybean, alfalfa, muskmelon, carrot, peanuts, wheat and corn. These are the commonly used plants for edible vaccines. Plant species, for example, the potato, it is a very common food and its advantages are this that it can be easily transformed, easily propagated and store for a long periods without refrigeration. As you know, potatoes आपके खराब नहीं होते हैं generally, and but disadvantage that it needs cooking with denature antigen. Similarly, banana do not need cooking. Just you have to peel the banana and you can eat. And protein not destroyed even after cooking. This is inexpensive and grow widely in developing countries. Disadvantage: trees take 2 to 3 years to mature and spoils rapidly after ripening. As you see that banana easily ripe. Rice commonly food used in baby and high expression of antigen. Disadvantage: it grows also slowly and requires glass house condition. Likewise, tomato advantages: it grow quickly, cultivate broadly, and high content of vitamin A, which may boost the immune response. But disadvantage that it also spoils readily. Now the factors affecting efficacy of edible vaccines. आपके कौन कौन से फैक्टर अफेक्ट कर सकते हैं एडिबल वैक्सीन को? दैट इज द एंटीजन सिलेक्शन. आपने कौन सा एंटीजन सेलेक्ट किया है, एफिकेसी इन द मॉडल सिस्टम, चॉइस ऑफ द प्लांट स्पीशीज, किस प्लांट में आप इंट्रोड्यूस करने जा रहे हैं, डिलीवर और डोजिंग कितना डाला, सेफ्टी इश्यूज, पब्लिक परसेप्शंस एंड क्वालिटी कंट्रोल एंड लाइसेंसिंग. नाउ द लिमिटेशंस ऑफ एडिबल वैक्सीन्स. लिमिटेशन क्या होंगी एडिबल वैक्सीन्स की? दैट द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इम्यूनोटॉलरेंस टू द वैक्सीन. इम्यूनोटॉलरेंस भी हो सकती है, डोज का हो सकता है, कंसिस्टेंसी ऑफ डोज फ्रॉम फ्रूट टू फ्रूट, एक फ्रूट में कितना डोज गया, यू कैन नॉट आइडेंटिफाई, यू कैन नॉट predict. Plant to plant it can vary and generation to generation it is also not similar. And evaluating dosage requirement is tedious, it is very tedious. And selection of best plant is also difficult. And certain fruits like we have discussed earlier, potato are not eaten raw. And cooking on the food might weaken the medicine present in it. So these are the limitations. Now coming to the recent developments which have now taken place, edible vaccines have been made to study the expression of ORF2 gene of hepatitis E virus in tomatoes. And genetically engineered tobacco plant made to produce the interleukin 10 which is used to test the intestinal disorder that is the Crohn diseases. So by these plants we can also help to cure these diseases like hepatitis E and the Crohn disease that is the intestinal disorders. Now coming to the applications, major success have been achieved on these edible vaccines like in the malaria. 3 antigens are currently being investigated for the development of a plant-based malaria vaccine. Merozoite surface protein 4 and 5 from the P. falciparum and MSP 4 5 from the P. joili. Like in for the malaria, in measles and diabetes also, MVH antigen was selected for the development of edible vaccines which can be transformed in the tobacco plants. Like in the diabetes, transgenic potato and tobacco plants with the gene GAD67 fed to the diabetic mice and developed insulin dependent diabetes. So now we can conclude we have studied what are edible vaccines, how they work, like the mechanism of action, the common plants which are used in the edible vaccines, then the mechanism of action and also the method of their development. And lastly, advantage and disadvantages also. And now I'm coming to the conclusion. What you can conclude from the edible vaccines? As we can see, edible vaccines are the painless. There is a no need of needle also. So it is also helpful for the infants, children, and also in the elderly patients also. So edible vaccine can be a substitute. It can be, I can say, good substitute. It might be a solution that will enable the positive effects of the vaccines. They offer a way to deliver a vaccine orally, thus decreasing the cost of production and shipping also. By the edible vaccine, you can cut cost of the production and shipping, like we have discussed that the transportation. And hence these novel invention of edible vaccines did a human service to humanity or mankind. If edible vaccines आपकी हर प्लांट में आने लग जाती हैं, So it can be a boon to a humanity or a mankind, because these vaccines are very cheap as compared to the normal vaccines, and they have the low side effects. This is the picture, like, which is expressing that injection. The kid is crying, and but he can eat by smile banana, and vaccine can be easily introduced in its system. So thank you for watching the video. Whatever may be the current situation, a day is not far off when we'll be able to pluck a fruit from the garden, eat it, and it can be protected from, we can be protected from the decision making needless needles needless. आपको जरूरत नहीं है now needles की.